I will take over the questions at this point, and Eric is up next. This question, I believe, goes to Governor Rauner.
Governor, this year you vetoed a bipartisan proposal to regulate the sales of guns in Illinois. And today, you, the state of Illinois, and the state police are facing a lawsuit that claims that you have not done enough to prevent gun violence in Chicago, causing PTSD in children. Is there a proposal that you can support that will help Chicago's gun problem without affecting the constitutional right of residents in other parts of the state?
Erica, I helped support and signed legislation that would increase safety by having a 72-hour waiting period for all gun sales, which was not the case in Illinois before. I also signed and supported legislation to be able to take guns away from individuals who are adjudicated mentally ill or dangerous to themselves or others. I vetoed the bill that you're raising because it would not change public safety. It would just lead to more unemployment and job losses because it would add a layer of bureaucracy onto stores that are already regulated. And I've proposed legislation to put security officers, resource officers into schools that would like them, to ban bump stocks, to increase safety across our communities. I've introduced 4 other bills. So far, the General Assembly hasn't acted on those bills.
Yeah, but 40% of the weapons that you can find in Chicago are sold in the state of Illinois. Is there anything that we can do about that?
Well, one of the things that I have done on a bipartisan basis is help sponsor and sign legislation that cracks down on illegal gun trafficking across state lines. Some of the illegal guns in Illinois come from other states, and we need to stop that, and we've taken action to do it.
Mr. Pritzker's next. Erica, do you need to rephrase in any way, or the same question?
The same question. What legislation would you like to support and pass to help the gun problem in Chicago?
Thank you. I just want to remind everybody that actually Governor Rauner mandatorily vetoed a 72-hour waiting period at the behest of the Illinois State Rifle Association, and under pressure removed those mandatory vetoes and finally signed that legislation. But look, he won't sign the gun dealer licensing bill, which requires background checks for people who handle guns at gun stores. And he hasn't done anything about high-capacity magazines or to stand up against bump stocks. Fact is that we need to
proposed a bill and your guys wouldn't do it.
Go after the implements of violence, but we also need to go after the underlying causes of violence. And when you have no budget for 2 years and you veto a budget in the 3rd year, and that's what Governor Rauner did, guess what happens? Violence interruption programs like Cure Violence go away. All across the state of Illinois, gun violence increased during the time period where there was no budget and where mental health facilities were closing and substance abuse treatment centers were closing and people were being laid off. The people who needed those services, that's their last vestige of contact with civil society, and Governor Rauner cut that.
Thank you, Mr. Pritzker. Governor, your rebuttal?
Mr. Pritzker's ally and puppet master, Mr. Madigan, had a supermajority during the 2 years of the budget impasse. He could have passed any budget that he wanted at any time, with or without my support. He was advocating for an income tax hike, not to structural change to bring down the cost of government. He wanted to force an income tax hike. He was eventually able to do that over my veto, and that just causes more suffering for our families, more job losses, and we will not have a correction to our violence problems unless we grow more jobs, and that's what I'm fighting to do.
Thank you, Governor. Mr. Pritzker, you'll be getting the next question first, and it comes from Craig.
It's related to gun control, but it has more to do with the violence in Chicago. The FBI is saying in its most recent report about the 27 violence across the country, Chicago, among big cities, still has the 4th highest murder rate. What role does the state have in helping Chicago, its largest city, control, tamp down gun violence to help the people?
Well, again, remember that when you go 2 years without a budget, let me remind everybody that we've had more years of Republican governors than Democratic governors over the last 40 years, but it's only in 2 years where we didn't have a budget, and that was under Governor Bruce Rauner, a 3rd year where he vetoed the budget. The fact is that we need to attack the gun violence problem immediately. In the city of Chicago, there are mothers across the city that have suffered terrible tragedy because their children have been killed. During the time period that Governor Rauner defunded the services that people need. And the violence interruption programs, that's when violence went up all across the state. Just to remind you, even in places like Springfield, where Cure Violence had to close down because of Governor Rauner. But here in the city of Chicago, we've got to do more. We've got to get rid of the implements, and we've got to make sure that the services that people need and the jobs that they need, because remember, youth job programs were cut or closed down because of Governor Bruce Rauner. Mental health facilities. These are all things that prevent people from ending up in gun
Governor, what's your
violence.
answer to the state's response to Chicago's violence problem?
We have been suffering in Chicago and many communities with violence because of a lack of economic opportunity. We have a lack of economic opportunity because of taxes and corruption. Mr. Pritzker wants to raise taxes. He is demonstrably part of the corruption in the city of Chicago. The city of Chicago has been determined to be the most corrupt city in America. Mr. Pritzker is a fundamental part of that corruption. We need to grow more jobs in our neighborhoods. I have been honored. I'm deeply honored by the National Black Chamber of Commerce has given me the Fletcher Award for doing more to help black business than any elected official in recent years. We need more jobs in our neighborhoods. I've been endorsed by every job creation organization in the state because they know I'm on the right track to bring more businesses, more jobs to our neighborhoods. That's the real answer to violence. The best answer to fight a gun is a job.
Well, we've got the highest unemployment rate among African Americans in the entire nation. What we need is
we no longer have that.
Focused on economic inclusion. I put forward a plan that will help people start businesses and grow businesses in the neighborhoods. People who've been left out and left behind, particularly people of color. I believe that this is a very important way for us to create jobs. 2/3 of all the jobs that get created in the state of Illinois are created by small and startup businesses. I've created thousands of them, helped people do that. Governor Rauner's cut back on small business development, and this state has suffered because he's created fewer jobs in his time in office than his predecessor did, who he called a miserable failure at job creation.
Move on to our next question. This question goes to Governor Rauner first, coming from Erica.
Governor, you have stated that you want to reinstate the death penalty in Illinois, but only for those who kill law enforcement officers and also carry out massacre. Then why only in those instances? And also, what if a police officer kills a civilian?
I believe that the death penalty should be reinstated for anyone who is guilty beyond any doubt whatsoever of killing a police officer or committing mass murder. I believe that's fair, it's right, it's justice, and it can serve as a deterrent against this violence. We need to support our police officers. They are our heroes. They put their safety on the line every day to keep the people of Illinois safe. They deserve our utmost support. We need to do more to support them. In the city of Chicago, our police have not been properly staffed. They haven't been given enough officers. They haven't been given proper equipment. They haven't been supported in training the way they should. And our police keep our community safe. They deserve more support.
Mr. Pritzker, you don't support it. Why? Or you have stated that you don't.
I do not support the death penalty. Is that your question? I do not support the death penalty. In fact, I funded the Center on Wrongful Convictions that was one of the progenitors of the moratorium on the death penalty in the state of Illinois. You're right. I don't support it. I think that people who commit heinous crimes should go away for their lifetimes. Now, I also believe that when police do it right, we need to stand up for them. But when they get it wrong, when people's constitutional rights are violated, when there's violence where there shouldn't have been, then they need to be held accountable. And that's what I'll do as governor.
Governor, you have a chance for rebuttal here, and let me just ask, I'll add on to this question here and just ask you in terms of a moral issue here. Mr. Pritzker's mentioned, of course, we've had a number of cases in Illinois where individuals were found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and we find out later on that they were innocent. How do we make sure, if you're going to bring back the death penalty, how do you make sure that that is not ever going to happen again? But beyond that, too, what is the purpose of bringing back the death penalty?
This is an issue for someone who is guilty beyond any doubts whatsoever. There are cases, yes, there is. There are cases where there is no doubt whatsoever that the crime was committed and who committed it, and the death penalty can be appropriate in that circumstance. But the key, again, the key to solving the violence and the deaths in our communities is economic opportunity. When in the years, many years before I became governor, we had the highest unemployment rate on the south side and the west side, highest unemployment rate for African Americans in the nation. I fixed that. We are no longer the highest unemployment rate.
Thank you, Governor.
Fixing our problem.
Thank you so much.
Hey, if you like that video, be sure to subscribe to our ABC7 Chicago YouTube channel.